Hi there everyone. Welcome to my virtual learning environment tour. I used Microsoft Teams to create my virtual learning environment because that's what OPS has purchased and would like all their teachers to use for ease for students and for parents. I'll explain why exactly here in a moment, but there are two ways for my students to access Teams. Any new device, so all those iPads that we've heard about in the news, is going to have Teams as an app on the desktop. So my students can click and it will open Microsoft Teams there. It will direct them to sign in. The other way that students can get there, and they're probably familiar with this option just as much, is by logging into Office 365. So when you log into Office 365, it will bring up all the apps that OPS has purchased and that you can use. You can add specific ones yourself, particularly if they're free and you use them a lot. And so Teams will appear on the front page of Office 365. Now, the reason why so many of us are familiar with logging into Office 365 is because it's how we get to our email. I know I'm a creature of habit, so I might automatically log into Office 365 and open my email and be like, oh wait, the reason I was going to Office 365 is to go to my Teams. Well, not a problem. We're all getting pretty familiar with the waffle, which is another way to access those apps, and Teams will be there as well. So when I click on it, it will open my Teams page, and this is what our students will see. So I talked about ease of use and why OPS encourages us to use Microsoft Teams. If we think of particularly our secondary students who may have 7 to 8 different teachers and classes, if we are all using our own virtual learning environment platform, that's a lot of different websites to keep track of and to be able to remember how to access our classroom. By all of us using Microsoft Teams, it familiarizes our students, and we have some common terminology to use. They know where their assignments are going to be held. They know where their class discussions are going to happen. So it creates some continuity that way for our students. It's also going to be easier for parents because if they have 3 or 4 kids, I've got a 3rd grader, an 8th grader, and a senior in high school. As a parent who's trying to facilitate virtual learning, I know, hey, you're all in OPS, you're all using Microsoft Teams. Get on Teams, talk to your teacher, check your assignments. It's one virtual learning environment for those parents to keep track of to help their students. Now, the first thing that you're going to see when you go to your Microsoft Teams are all the classes that you are a part of. Old classes are there as well, as long as the teacher hasn't gotten rid of them or changed the settings or functions. That means as a teacher, all of the different groups I belong to are going to be here as well. One of the first features I'm going to show my students is that these little 3 dots, I can hide these so that it's not so overwhelming, so that I don't see all the classes that I don't need information from. I'm going to encourage them to hide them versus delete them because maybe my 5th grade teacher showed me a really great graphic organizer, or there was a project that I did in that team that I'm really proud of. This will still allow me to have access to all the work I've created and old notes that I'd want to carry on from class to class as well. But when I go to this home page, it's not so many classes for me to scroll through. It's not so confusing for me to look at. So with ease in mind, I simply called my class for next year 6th grade. It's their ELA class. And hey, this is my first period class. So hopefully it can help them easily find where to go. So if they have 8 different classes, they can start to keep in mind which would be my first period class. Also for me as a teacher, if I need to accommodate or change a few things for different classes, it will allow me to change those settings in them as well. This is the page it's going to open everyone up to. This is going to be their landing page. It's first going to open up the posts because this is a place for me to give them any kind of announcements. It's also a place where we can have our class discussions. Now, I didn't have to create this tab up here, so this is a common tab. Again, when we talk about ease for our students, it's a common feature that they'll see from class to class so that they can familiarize themselves with it and know, hey, this is where we do our class discussions. This is where I'm able to post things. I gave them a reminder of my office hours. Now, I posted this with the thinking about if we are not back in the classroom and we're still doing virtual learning, I know that one of the expectations in OPS is that I have time given to my students where they could access me live without having to watch an asynchronous video where they watch a tutorial. Not only will I have my email open during school day hours, if my students are needing some one-on-one help or direction, they can respond right here. Hey, Mrs. Balkovic, can we meet Tuesday? They'll know from 1 to 3. I will be checking this, and we could jump over here and we could do that video conferencing call here because it's linked within Teams here to have that function. The next announcement I wanted them to be able to see, and I can pin these so that they stay at the top, or I can remove them as time passes. Once our live class isn't there anymore, I can remove the announcements. But I also started to do some planning for the fall. So our first live class where I would expect to see, 22 or 30 students hopefully logging in would be from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Wednesday, August 12th. So those would be announcements and reminders. The other function of posts is to have those conversations and to create a place where we're starting to discuss and brainstorm new ideas. So I posted an activity that I'd want them to complete to start the unit off. All the texts we'll be reading in Unit 1 are going to share a central idea. Complete this puzzle and respond with what idea you think we will be exploring this quarter. I have hyperlinked this puzzle, and so that would be something I'd want to point out to them and make them aware of. Hey, look, it's all cats and it's in a different color. And if they click on it, it will take them to Jigsaw Planet, which is a resource that I shared in our tech resources. So if you saw this, this may look familiar to you. This is what it will look like when it's done because it's taking me to my page. This is a free site. Again, I can create a class list. So it's very easy for my students to have an account with them. They'd put it together and hopefully generate some kind of idea of overcoming something or trying to do something hard or succeeding, facing a fear, and we would be able to have that conversation going here on our posts. The next tab in our classroom is files. This is where I'm going to put all of those worksheets and PDFs that I normally pass out. This is going to be where I can give them my PowerPoints and tutorials. Now, again, when I talk about commonality and making it easy for our students, the first folder you're going to see is classroom materials. That's already been created for all teachers when they have this. We all have a file section and we all have a class materials folder. I can make and add as many folders underneath as I'd like. Couple of things to keep in mind. Class materials are only going to be viewable by students. They can't edit them. They can't type on them. So I intentionally wanted to have a notes folder, something that they can edit, something that they can type on, easy for them when we're having those live classroom discussions and I want them to take a few notes, or if I want them to listen to a podcast and have access to a graphic organizer, this would be that place where I would do that. So in notes, they have access to the first couple of topics we're going to be talking about in Unit 1, which is plot and theme. So I have the PowerPoint here because for some students it's going to be easier for them to type right on the notes. Particularly when I think about accommodations for some of my students. Maybe I don't want them writing and typing all the words themselves. I want them to be able to type and make notes and be able to jot things right on the actual notes. But then for others, I actually do want them to have the handout that I would normally pass out, but they can doodle right on that, so I've attached that as well. Class Notebook is our online virtual notebook. Think of a classroom notebook. If I want them to keep a running list of vocab lists, if I want them to take some longhand notes, if I want them to be able to do exit tickets, I can put all of those sections into a notebook. I can create longer, lengthier assignments that would require more typing in a classroom notebook, not a handout that I'd want them to just be able to edit and jot on. So the appropriate place for them to create their own writing and their own work would be the notebook. Here's where I'm going to link all of our assignments. Again, I didn't have to create that tab, so it's going to create some of that commonality, make it easy for my students to transition from classroom to classroom. They should be familiar with checking the assignments tab. In language arts, something our students will be familiar with is there's a selection test and there's a collection test. Selection tests are formative grades that are given after every poem, every story, every passage that they read. And then the collection test is a summative grade that they take at the end of the unit, typically at the end of the quarter, to review all the skills that they've learned. From a teacher point of view, when I click on this, I'm going to see all of my functions that I can edit when I'm adding assignments. One of the coolest functions we have, so that we don't overwhelm our students, I can have all my assignments ready in this tab, but I can change the date for when they're scheduled so that students only see them for a certain amount of time. And then once they're due, they won't continue to appear in their assignment list anymore, so that our students can track their progress. We have grades that will be automatically generated once I grade, like for example, this test. I don't have to enter that grade again. Once I grade it here, it will automatically go to their grades. I guess I will show you the student view. When they click on it, this is what they will see. They'll see the form of the multiple choice selection test for their first formative grade. Again, I wouldn't want to see them to see that right now. We haven't even read the ravine, so no, I don't want to worry and stress them out over something we haven't even done yet. Insights is a tab just for teachers. I did have to add this tab. This is an app that I included because what it does is it takes live, accurate, up-to-date data for me. Average time for feedback. So how long is it taking me to respond to students and grade things? How long or how many of my students are turning in their assignments on time? What's my average grade? How many people are actually getting on and opening their assignments as a digital activity, so that when I collaborate with my colleagues, I have some up-to-date information to share about how virtual learning is going. So I thought it'd be important that I add that app. The last three are for my students. Tinkercad is going to be a space that they're going to get familiar with. So it's a link to a website that I know we're going to use a lot. So instead of making my students type it in, I've created the link for them to go automatically to that website. Tinkercad is where they're going to be able to, Tinkercad is where they're going to be able to do some 3D drawings. They can do it with blocks like they're used to in Minecraft or Lego bricks. They can create visuals for the vocab words individually as an alternative assignment so that they don't all have to do vocabulary work the same way. But I can also create group projects where they get to collaborate with one another, so that maybe we've read the story and I want you to, in your group, create a 3D virtual model of our setting, or they can create a virtual 3D model of the character. So there's lots of cool applicable functions that we can use with Tinkercad. So I thought that that would be important for their makerspace. If Teams is our class, Clever is our bookshelf. Clever will house commonly used apps in many of their classrooms. It also will house their online textbooks. For language arts, that's this MyHRW. So to access the stories and materials that we're going to be using for the curriculum here, this would be for their science, I believe. I think this is math. So this is their bookshelf with their textbooks. The last thing that is included here is a link to our website. The cool thing here is I can create a post, an announcement, and in that I can create the hyperlink to take them directly to district materials like the district calendar to say, hey, remember Q3 is starting when we get back from winter break. I can also link it to what's happening in our building so that, hey, look, she just posted a new video. Good job to our Quiz Bowl team. And I can give them those reminders. I can link it to them, and then they have access to open that right here. Also, this will be important when we do our GLE project. There will be library tools that they'll want to access, and they'll want to be able to see the library page of where they're going to get the resources for that project. So, important resource as well. Thank you for taking this tour with me. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you all explore Microsoft Teams so that we can create some ease and commonality for our students.